So we'll go ahead with some introductory comments, and then we'll get into this. Um, we've been around for, I guess, five years or so now, and as we've been doubling or tripling every year, about I don't know, about 130% growth during COVID annually. This year we'll probably triple. And as we look at that, so first of all, big thanks to the customers that are driving that. I love you guys to pieces. The second thing that's interesting about that is that that growth is fueled by distinct markets that traditional RFID players really aren't looking at or working on. And I'll give one example, and then this presentation is the next one, second example. So one of the things that happens in RFID is that tags get corrupted, and it doesn't happen a lot. After a tag's been around for a year, maybe you've got 5 in 1,000 that are messed up and have incorrect data. And we spend a lot of time figuring out in the signal processing world a lot of things about how to make that go away and how to do interesting things. And the reaction was very binary from a lot of people in sort of what we'll call traditional RFID. Said, if the error rates are 1 in 1,000, great. And there was another group that we're doing great business with that really data integrity was very important to them, and we're doing happy business with them. And similar things happen on the robustness side. Similar things happen on the security side, where your typical RFID reader is a relatively insecure device, and some people are fine with that, and they have a sophisticated IT group that balls off that world. And other folks are very, very uncomfortable with the devices unless the devices themselves are super secure. And we're finding that those traits often go together, that people who want a really robust device often seem to care about the robustness of the data. And so you'll start to see, those themes come out largely because that's what's driving pretty robust growth for us. And hopefully, as we walk you through these presentations, it'll help you think not just about, oh, they make a robust device, but also when might robustness help you sell. So that's enough of a little thing. Oh, and one last thing, we spin a new reader generation about once a year. Last year it was primarily a software revision. This year, our hardware. You may have seen the recent Impinj announcement of a new chip, a new reader chip. It's a sweet little chip where all of our hardware is being spun again, and we're clamping down the specs and the features and stuff. So if you'd like to have input on where do we go next, we're happy to talk to you, particularly if you're in these markets where robustness matters, data integrity matters, security matters. A lot of what we're doing there is making devices that are focused on being really, really wickedly cool in that area. Okay, enough of introduction. We let all the late people come.
Just one thing. I think
I forgot about this.
Every time we say the word robustness, I think everyone who's on the webinar needs to take a drink. And depending on what time of your day it is, it's either going to be tea or coffee or your favorite tipple. But every time we say robustness, everyone take a drink.
I'll try not to wear it out. So anyway, we both ride motorcycles, and we went on a trip together. That's pictures from the trip. So we spoke a little bit about how we got here, and we got here serving customers where the existing equipment for signal processing reasons or for the RFID protocol just fell short, or it wasn't tough enough. You know, a farmer in Australia looked at RFID equipment and said, "How quaint! That seems kind of wimpy." Um, and Neil, why don't you discuss? This is a little bit pithy, but it's fairly accurate. Neil, why don't you run through what most of the readers in the world look like now?
Yeah, if you take a look at the majority of the fixed readers out there today, they focus on. In fact, if you show the next slide, Joe, I mean, really the reason. Oh, okay, took something out. Never mind. Go back.
just for clarity, this is what you sent me.
There we go. So, I mean, most of the readers out there today, they've been designed in a lab. They're meant to. They're not really meant to live outside. They've got holes in. They've literally got holes in. The connectors are poking out through holes. There's no attempt to seal them, or very little. There's air holes. There's holes where the lights are, and things of this kind. So basically, there's it's designed in a lab. They're not really meant to go into a real environment. They're not really meant to go into a dusty environment, an environment where there may be some moisture or even, heaven forbid, rain, or something that really happens outside in the real world.
It looks like their design was funded by the same people that make NEMA boxes.
Right. So
that's how people handle this, right? You know, if you buy a reader, you buy a NEMA box in a lot of applications, and that just seems kind of odd.
Yeah, it just seems very strange to us that there's no real consideration about the environment that these readers are going to go into. Even some of the very latest readers that have just come out over the past 6 months, 12 months. They're just as bad. The IP53 or worse. If you do put them into an outside environment, you just can't put them into an outside environment unless you put them in another container, a NEMA box, which is going to protect you from the environment, heat. But then have to take care of all that heat. You've got fans in, you've got more electricity to take in, and it's just this whole situation just evolves and gets worse and worse and worse and more expensive.
Right. So I think it's worthwhile. We're getting kind of pulled into this for a multitude of reasons. One is, as Neil indicated, and maybe we're too harsh on current readers. They're basically designed for a retail environment where there's good airflow and there's air conditioning. And, that market is doing very well, a lot of growth, God bless them, hats off to them. You can't take that reader and put it in a place where it's being physically beat on. These are, generally speaking, they're thin aluminum covers that are anodized to look pretty. But there's other environmental things that are happening in our customer base that air conditioning is becoming more and more, you can't count on it, because one of the first things that these power guys do when they're stressed is they beg people to turn off AC. And it is worthwhile to say that we're starting to see environmental swings now, and I think they are part of our present and certainly part of our future. Well into Canada in June, the temperatures were 52 degrees C, 52 degrees C. And in Texas, they were minus 15 degrees C when they never get there. And both of those led to a lot of power grid fluctuations. And that's a place where there's a knock-on effect where, building stuff that can operate over broader temperature regions, particularly on the hot side, becomes pretty important. So the reader that we're going to talk about today, it is IP67, including all of the connectors. It's designed to run in very, very tough thermal environments, up to 55 degrees C, and honestly, it'd probably go beyond that. And there's small things here. It is very rugged, and the weight of the container and the structure of it really dissipates heat well. It's also painted off-white, and the reason it's painted off-white is that if you make a red reader and you take it outside, it absorbs a lot more heat from solar radiation. and just small details like that about what is it, how do you actually go outside have been thought about and brought into these readers. And generally speaking, these are always deployed with no NEMA and no fans.
Just something I want to point out. I mean, we keep talking about outside, and obviously this reader, is used outside a lot. But we can also talk about warehouses here that also get extremely hot during the summer, or even on a dock door where maybe gets direct sunlight for a few hours a day. And if you don't want your reader to go down, it needs to be ready to cope with these kinds of conditions.
Right. Yeah. In general, the demand that we're getting is from folks that are really in extreme places. So when they're tracking a military fighter jet inventory on a hot tarmac, okay, we're the folks you call up. But in fact, any application where you're forced to go into NEMA boxes and fans is sort of an indicator that you're operating equipment outside of what was designed for. These are Hero certified, so they're tested to mil-spec 564, and that means that basically you can operate them in explosive environments. They are good readers. Much of what we did for the first couple years of our existence is just test and test and test readers and develop reader technology that was super solid. So Neil, why don't you talk about kind of at a high level what this thing has inside of it?
Yeah. Well, you can see how robust the reader's looking here, as we've been talking about. Of course, it's an RFID reader. It's a 4-port RFID reader, and as Joe already mentioned, all the ports here, all the actual physical connectors are also IP67, just like the chassis. So what that really means is that all you need to do is attach an IP67 cable, and you are done. You do not need to put this into any form of protective box for physical reasons, temperature reasons, or other environmental reasons. We also have GPS built into this device. You just need a little external antenna, and we'll show you where that goes in a second. But the GPS is internal. Also internal, we have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth Low Energy capability. So the Bluetooth, particularly Bluetooth Low Energy, we can use and have used for reading and accessing active tags and things of that kind. And Bluetooth we have used for transferring data to and from different devices, and of course Wi-Fi connectivity to networks and things of that kind if you don't have a hardwired network around. And that's important because probably 40-45% of the applications that we see this fixed reader going into end up going into some kind of vehicle or cart or mobile platform which is also battery powered. And so you need that to be robust, and therefore connectivity is not going to be permanent. It's going to be in and out of areas of connectivity, and that's where the Wi-Fi really comes in. And we'll talk more about some of those applications shortly. And then the other thing inside this is the CPU capability and the memory capability. This is a full Linux system, quad core, tons of memory. So you can do a lot of things, not just tag storage, but you can store a lot of other important pieces of information from your environment in this reader, and of course transmit that out with Wi-Fi or regular Ethernet.
Okay. So this is a nice shot of the connectors, and you can see you've got 4 antenna ports. There's a GPIO. The GPIO is an interesting thing in that the cabling for it is also IP67.
Go ahead, Joe, and they'll pop up the labels.
I see. Look at that. Yeah, so those are SMA connectors, and you can buy cabling that makes them IP67. GPIO's got a special cable you can buy from us, again IP67, and all of these are all IP67. The general way to power this is with PoE, and we've done a lot of systems that are operating off of 12 or 24 volts so that they can be in either warehouses or vehicles. In fact, we're just doing the installation in a bunch of school buses, and it's a nice switch DC application.
Yeah.
So a couple things.
PoE is PoE plus as well, so there's plenty of power for the reader operating, and it's full 33 dBm from PoE.
Yeah, that's correct. This is just there's a more fun picture of the reader going to the bottom of a swimming pool. It's kind of more dramatic, but here's the reader under a meter of water, and it sits there for a few hours, and then you bring it out and test it. This is we've actually done this with dry ice on the bottom and the top, just demonstrating cold starts. And cold starts, one of the interesting things when we talk about this is we all get in our heads that these are special conditions, and they sort of are, but honestly, they're happening often enough that our customers are saying, look, we just want wider operating capability so that we don't have to have shit go down, pardon my language, they don't have to have stuff go down all the time. So Neil, you can talk about this.
So obviously showing the physical robustness here. So Joe managed to convince his wife to park her car on top of the reader on the left-hand side there. And yeah, we did some videos. And we put the reader in and literally buried it and stuff like that. So on the right-hand side is Joe basically hosing it down and cleaning it off afterwards. So
yeah.
Yeah, obviously it's absolutely built for this kind of abuse and works just fine afterwards.
Yeah, one of the funny pieces about this is obviously, when we're striking it with hammers and we're beating on it with mallets and parking cars on it. So it did get scraped up a little bit, and obviously we didn't give this to any customer. But this unit works fine. In fact, it's in ongoing regression testing now. So we just use it as a mule to test software loads for reliability, and it works great. We'll walk you through some software and tools that we have. This happens to be for all of our readers, but we have a really nice console that does all the configuration. AutoSense is what we use now. It's basically a simple scripting language, and so you tell the reader how to operate and where to send the data, and then as soon as it turns on, it does that. In AutoSense, when it's running, the only response, the only command that the reader will respond to is stop. And so, we basically are able to turn off every other communications avenue into a reader. That's one of the pieces of making things more secure. Command Center allows you to see and operate a bunch of readers. We're putting web browsing into our readers. It's already in Extreme, moving over to the other ones. Generally, we're becoming a RESTful house. We do support other things, but our predominant development effort, and we're strongly supported by customers here, is getting people onto RESTful. It allows you to do a pile of things in a very easy, very lightweight, very simple remote management of sensors. And then, as Neil said, this reader supports Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS natively. So it comes out of the box, you hook up an antenna, and off you go. So we'll walk through some applications. So Neil, why don't you do the first one? This is our friends in GlobeRanger. Fine group of folk.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
In fact, they're doing several different applications, but this is the one that has been a little bit more public. So
it's also the most dramatic. It's kind of cool when you say you're hero rated and the F-35 Lightning II is yours. Anyway, go ahead.
give a quiz for anyone who knows what the Lightning One was, but that's a different day. So the reader's being used here basically on the tugs that control or push out and pull back in the aircraft, and is also being used for basically monitoring tools and equipment going in and out to the aircraft. I mean, just like someone having an operation, you don't want to leave an implement inside someone. It's probably pretty bad if you leave a tool hanging around an aircraft before it takes off. So it's really important that this stuff is tracked very, very consistently. And as part of this, the reader did get HERO certified for use around munitions. So the implication there is, yeah, we're tracking bombs and laser guided this, that, and the other. And the key reasons the reader was selected is because it is going into a pretty rough environment. It's living outside in some pretty extreme temperatures. I mean, these aircraft are operated, in different air bases around the US, around the world. And so the weather conditions could be anything from very hot, very cold, very wet. And also, of course, it's going to be banged into and crashed into by anything from a forklift truck to a large piece of munitions is going to bang into it or something. So that's one of the reasons, and so thermals and the resilience of it physically. But also the GPS is important because, again, this is vehicle mounted, so we need to know where the reads are taking place, and then we need to transfer the information back. So as soon as the tug is back into Wi-Fi range, that information gets communicated back to wherever it needs to. And as we said, it's vehicle mounted, and therefore it's running from battery throughout its lifetime. We do a lot of that.
So it's kind of interesting that when we're talking about mobile applications, that we'll describe two here. One is keeping track of effectively the inventory and information for police officers. And so police officers have things that they absolutely need to know where they are, things like weapons. They also have a lot of information. They take pictures, they receive and send files, they take a lot of videos. And so the Extreme is a really good unit here. It's rugged, and you can pop it in the back of a car, and it doesn't matter. The interior of the car gets up to 130 or 140 degrees C. It's still operating just fine. And it can independently keep track of where the car is. If it loses a Bluetooth connection with the officer, it knows the officer has left the car. The officer can send and receive files and store them via the Extreme, because the Extreme's got that much storage capability. And again, it's running off of a 24-volt system. A remarkably similar system to this has just been deployed in schools on buses to keep track of children, to make sure that particularly little children can get confused at the start of a new school year. They get on the wrong bus, and in a rural area, that can mean that they're basically tooling around for 20-30 minutes without people knowing where they are. So this system makes sure that the kids that are getting on the bus, should be on that bus. And if they're not supposed to be on that bus, the driver can say, hey, Sally, do you mean to be on this bus? And the little girl can say, yeah, I'm going to my friend's house. And a lot of the same features are used there. Battery operation. Again, these buses typically are not air conditioned, and they work in some pretty hot environments. So all of those things play nicely into a more rugged reader. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, so getting away from the type of law enforcement and military, and into smart building materials. And we've done a lot with these passive sensors that measure temperature and moisture. And so we've been working with some Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies really, that are basically involved in this market, and have been very well established in this market for many years. And so they're now embedding these sensors into the roofing material that goes into these flat roofs on commercial buildings and office complexes. And what they wanted to do was basically to develop a cart, and in some cases a robotized cart that's sort of autonomous and basically just rolls over the roof once a week or once a day or whenever they want to, again in the baking heat or in the pouring rain, and can then measure these sensors that are embedded into the materials here. And the goal here is to sense the moisture content of the roofing materials. So we can get a picture, basically a map, to the heat map, it's a moisture map of the roof that they're looking at, so they know if there's actually leaks in the roof. And this is a big problem for these contractors that are involved in managing buildings. They want to detect leaks as soon as possible. The sooner they can catch them, the less expensive the repairs are going to be. So again, the reasons here are pretty obvious. This rugged, thermal's going to have to put up with that kind of environment.
This is an interesting application. Again, it's a vehicle mounted. I feel like a broken record. Yeah, we're mounting in another vehicle again, but we do that a lot. This is basically driving down the road and it's interrogating tags on the road. And what it's providing is the tag read, time, the EPC, and a GPS location stamp. GPS is spitting out locations every 100 milliseconds. So even if you're tooling along at 60 or 70 miles an hour, it will tell you fairly accurately where the tag is. And what they're doing is they're finding where defective parts in the road are, and they're associating it with a tag and a location that's being read to them by RFID. So it's a very cost-effective way of locating a pothole and telling people exactly where the pothole is to go and remediate it. And again, it's all the same things. It's got high reader performance. It's got a GPS that's cranking out location pretty often, and it's rugged and running on a battery in a truck without any problems. So Neil?
Yeah, another one that we've done quite a bit of is automotive applications. We've got a couple of different ones, but one of the ones is dealerships. Again, these readers are being used either on the boundaries of inside and outside, right at a kind of a doorway where the vehicles are coming in into the service department, or in some cases actually physically outside where there may be some kind of overhead apron or roofing, but it's still open to all the other elements. And this is all about being able to spot the vehicles as they're coming in for servicing. It alerts the service personnel as to who's come in for their service, so the name pops up on the board, and the name can pop up overhead on the large screen if helpful. So again, it's all down to the fact that they want a reader that they don't have to worry about, is it going to work in this environment? Do I have to add a lot of cost in order to protect it from the environment? No, you don't. You can just bolt this in and get going.
So before we talk about this, there's one application that is really fun. So there's a startup that's relatively famous, and they dig tunnels, and they have cars that go through the tunnels. And so they're a customer of ours. And then one of their first tunnels is in Las Vegas. And just wanted to point out to everybody that we have Extreme readers that are operating 24/7 inside the tunnels. And that's kind of cool. But we also have unprotected readers just up there catching all that brilliant sunlight of Las Vegas on 120-degree days on the top of parking garages. And so, it's interesting if you talk about a lot of different places around the world now, 30, 40, 50 degrees C, those are just regular temperatures. And this device works just great there. And it's our next generation devices, they'll just take robustness the next step forward. So this kind of lets you know if you're thinking about what customer needs could you meet, what kind of markets could you crack open. If you're outside, or if you're in a place where you're in a factory where they have to spray things down, if you're in a condensing environment like a freezer or a cooler, um, this works great there. If you're in a thermal environment where people are realistically asking you questions about, okay, what happens if the air conditioner goes off? Or can I take this same unit outside, or can I use it in a car where the car gets hot when the sun beats on it? The answer is yep. This does a real good job with GPS, and we've invested a fair amount of time in allowing you to adjust how often you get the GPS information and where the GPS information is delivered. And finally, um, we do a lot of vehicle, be they trucks or buses or police cars or cranes or big ag equipment, whether it's 12 volts or 24 volts, building good systems that allow these things to.
Or just mobile carts, just carts of also
Yeah.
stuff.
Neil personally did the cart on the roof thing. So, okay. So I think.
Well, the other thing I wanted to point out though is that people think of a reader, when they start thinking of a reader like this, they start thinking, okay, I'm going to pay a premium for this type of reader. You're not going to pay a premium for this type of reader. This reader is priced at or below some of the competitive non-IP67 type readers that you're used to. You're going to see similar performance with this reader compared to the readers that you know are out there. So you're not going to pay a premium for this. So I turn the question around in some ways to say, shouldn't you be buying readers or using readers that are robust in a warehouse if it's not going to be a cost premium to do so, and you're going to get the same performance?
Yeah. So this is the overall portfolio. What we've been talking about. Our previous presentation introduced you to error-free RFID, and as I said before, a lot of the audience said, "Who cares? Errors are okay." And the other part of the audience said, "We'd love you. Come do business with us." What we're talking about here is the IP67 reader that you see in the top left. And again, a lot of customers, you got your infrastructure, you're in a retail environment, everything's okay, and we're not going to sway you. That's totally fine. But if you're in these environments that are really demanding something that is industrial grade, I think we've got a really nice solution for you. And I think at this point we can open it up for questions, right?
Yeah. So if you have questions, there's a Q&A button. So feel free to ask away there.
All right.
We'll even answer questions about what type of motorcycles Joe rides.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Very comfortable ones.
Yeah.
Okay. And certainly there's a lot of information for people on the website as well, if people want to follow up with looking at some details there. We also have kind of a video user guide for all of our readers on the website. So if you're kind of interested in taking a little 5-minute look at what this reader is and all the input outputs or the software for it, you can go to the website, go to support, take a look at the video user guides, and we've got a nice little 5-minute chunks that you can take a quick look and just kind of educate yourself some more if you're interested. And of course, if you want to some additional steps, just reach out to either Joe or myself.
Yeah, so a couple things in closing, because it doesn't look like we're getting a lot of questions this afternoon or this morning.
One question. You get one. Is the reader compatible with your other readers and software?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was pretty easy. Man, somebody threw us out a softball for us, and it's kind of interesting as the next generation of readers comes out. that compatibility will be sort of ridiculously high, and it's really meant to be um, kind of an absolutely seamless experience, whether you've got something that's inside and sort of aesthetically pleasing, or outside and wickedly tough. They'll look and feel and behave exactly the same, with sensor tags, with um, in every way. A couple things just for people to remember. Again, we've been growing very, very nicely, doubling and tripling. We're looking at tripling this year, and probably at least tripling in 2022. To the customers that have been helping us do that, we've had a hell of a time. Thank you very much. We'll continue to do everything we can to help you. If you'd like your business to get on a piece of that, give us a call. If it's a sizable business, we'll definitely do everything we can to make that work for you. Another thing is our business partners. We always want to give them thanks. Our manufacturing and design partner is MTI out of Taiwan. They are owned by Foxconn, and so if y'all are wondering, how does a reader company get the chips required to make readers during a global chip crunch? Great question. You ask your other suppliers. They've helped us by. We think that this problem is going to persist at least to the summer of 2023, and all of the key chips that we use, we've basically, Foxconn has basically bought ahead for us. So we've done everything we can to make sure that we've got security of supply if you decide to partner with us. And with that, do we get any other questions there, Neil?
I think we had one other one, which is how do we power the reader basically in some of these mobile applications, DC versus PoE?
Yeah, so we'll geek out for a second here. We're typically looking for a switched 12 or 24 volt supply, so that if you happen to park your tractor in the winter and it's not running for 3 months, the reader doesn't drain the battery system. So typically what we're doing is we're looking for a switched 12 or 24 volts. A lot of our customers do want these readers to operate for a very long time without the equipment being on. So typically what we're doing is we're taking the switched 12 and 24, we're running it through an inverter, we're driving that into a charger that's basically charging a 48 volt battery. And so the 48 volt battery directly drives the PoE system. And what that does for these guys is that when the tractor or the school bus or the police car is turned off, the 48 volt battery can run the system for weeks or months. And because it's running off of switch 12 and 24 volts, when the cop car is off and it's parked for 6 months for whatever reason, effectively what happens is the 48 volt battery discharges to 48 volts, and then it turns itself off. The reader goes down, and nothing bad happens. When the police car comes back up, switches on, everything starts charging up. As soon as it hits a voltage of 48 volts, it pops the PoE system on. The PoE system lights up the reader goes into auto sense, and it does its deal. So that's the more extensive one. The lighter one is we just take a switched 12 volts into a ruggedized PoE injector that has 12 volt to 57 volt compliance. So as soon as the vehicle turns on, the system's running at about 13.8 volts or so. That flips on the injector, and the injector powers up the reader, no problem. And Well, one last comment is these are fairly robust PoE systems inside of the reader, so they have pretty wide tolerance of noise and stuff like that. Sorry, the first question was short. The second one was a little geeky.
So that's the end of the questions. Thanks for the comment from our Brazil friends. Thank you very much. And yep, I think we're done, Joe.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.
Right. Thanks everyone for joining. And any questions, please reach out.